First of all, thank you. You're very generous. I would like to thank you first for coming to see the movie in a theater. That means the world to me. Thank you very much. Yeah. And of course, thank you, Chris, for being here tonight. That means the world to me, of course.
No, thank you for having me. And not just any theatre, this DGA theatre that's been renovated. It's my first time back in it since it's been renovated. It looks absolutely beautiful. And thank you for giving the speakers a decent workout. It was fabulous. So my first inkling of anything to do with this project is you and I had dinner some years ago with a couple of producers. And somebody around the table, it was after Arrival, and somebody said, "Oh, Legendary has just acquired the rights to Dune," and you immediately said, somebody said, "Well, what's going on with that?" And you said, "Well, nobody's doing anything with that." And two things were immediately apparent to me. One is you should never be a professional poker player, and the other is soon enough I'm going to be sitting there watching your version of this incredible book. And now that I have, a couple of times now, I want to know, how long was this long-held dream? When did it start?
You mean, I apologize, Chris. You said, how long,
When did you first want to do this book? How long has this been in your head?
Okay. I read it when I was 13 years old, so it's like, and of course, when I read the book, it was at the precise moments where I was trying to get interested of was happening behind the camera, and discovering the job of a director. And I remember at the time, my best friend and I were writing screenplays, doing storyboards, and we were dreaming at the time. Of course, it was fantasy, but we were storyboarding Dune. I mean, we were dreaming at the time, but it was just like out of reach, of course. Then when I came here working in LA, when people were asking me what would be your ultimate project, and the book always came back in my mind. It's a book that stayed with me for 40 years, and I kept getting back to it. It still brings a deep joy and a deep inspiration to me. So it's like but I will say I considered working on the book since maybe 7 or 8 years, that I started to say, okay, where are the rights? How come after the Lynch movie, which, with all respect to the master, I loved some aspect of it, but when he deviated from the book. So I kept for years wondering who will do another adaptation. I was waiting for an adaptation. I was waiting, and then I get tired. I said, okay, I'm going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, with respect to the Lynch adaptation, what I feel when I see the film is this is a very, very different film. And it does seem closer to the book. Not that I'm an expert on the book. I read it when I was about the same age as you did. And yet there's some kind of lingering respect for some of the Lynch film, I think, in there, even as it's a completely new version of it. And I think in some ways what they share is a complete commitment to realizing an absolutely detailed world. And how did you start to plan the level of detail that's in this film?
That's the thing is that I said to the crew, the whole crew, that we were not there to express ourselves, but to try to bring Herbert, the words of Herbert, to the screen. The book was the Bible. We went back to the book all the time. At the very beginning of the process, I sat alone with my storyboard artist, and I spent weeks drawing alone with him. A bit like I did when I was 13 years old with my friend. It was exactly the same. So trying to, like an archaeologist, trying to go back to the old images that I had when I was really trying to go back to the images I had when I read the book the first time, when those uncorrupt image, the image and the emotions that I had when I read the book, and focusing on nature and the place of humans in the ecosystems, and so And I said to the crew that I did that work with my storyboard artist, and then I brought one designer, and it was forbidden to talk about, to take any reference from the internet. I wanted it to come from dreams, or trying to meditate and trying to find images I just, there's an elephant in the room, and it's Star Wars. It's like it's to design a movie like that, that Star Wars as being inspired deeply by Dune. They are trying to bring something fresh, so the idea was to focus on dreams and the book.
I did that work happen in parallel with the screenwriting process? How did the script, because obviously adapting such a complicated book, such a long book, talk us through a little bit of how that process interacted with the design ideas and the visualizations.
It was a parallel process, because at the beginning I asked Eric Roth to put his hands on the keyboard at the beginning, and as he was doing so, I was starting to draw with my friends, trying to bring images to. So it was like a parallel work. So thing is that I had a lot of time. I have, say, like a year of design in a very intimate way. But it was that just to find the main alphabet, the language, the visual language of the movie. Once I found that, I brought my production designer on board, and then he explored that world and defined all the cultures and everything.
And at what point was your decision to do just the first half of the book? I mean, it's almost exactly the first half of the book. I think it's slightly into book 2.
It's right at the beginning. It's something that I proposed to the studio right away, because I was feeling that to try to put that story into one movie it will be damageable. It will be a mistake. And they didn't. It was not a discussion. They agreed spontaneously. They said the only thing where we started to talk was that I wanted to make both movies in the same time. And that felt too expensive. And I should say that, you're always as good as your last movie, and you bring the reputed and I think that Blade Runner wasn't a major box office success, so I think that they were a bit cold at the idea of investing for 2 movies right away. I think that's the truth. That's what I understood.
I think that was negotiating tactics on the studio's part, because I think Blade Runner was a very successful film and an incredible piece of work. I think they were pulling your leg a little with that. But I have to say, having visited the set of a couple of filmmakers who shall remain nameless, who were doing 2 films back to back, I've never seen people so exhausted. It's such difficulty. I vowed to myself I would never do 2 films back to back.
But I would have died. I'm so happy we didn't, because I will not add the stamina to do that. Frankly, the truth, I'm grateful that it happened this way, because it would have shooting in the desert and the elements. It was very inspiring and exhilarating. But we were exhausted at the end of this shoot. Yeah, exhausted.
How many days did you shoot?
It's a tricky question, because I'm not sure about the answer. I think that I woke up 120 times to take a camera in my hands, but the actual real number for the main crew is 105 or something like that. But I had, for the first time of my life, I had decided to work with more than one unit, because otherwise I will not be here tonight. It was like too much work to do in too much little time. So I had to, for the first time, learn how to direct multiple units, and that was like it's not the best way to work. I love to work with one camera, one tripod. That's it. But not. I didn't have the choice. I had to do it this way.
And where did you shoot? What were your choices in terms of where you would build, where you would find locations? How did you go about that process?
Well, we choose the best because they had the necessary the stage space that we had, what needed. I had shot Blade Runner there. They have fantastic stages, big enough for the sets that we were designing. And then we shot in Jordan and in Abu Dhabi, because in Jordan you have like all the rocky formation that I was looking for, but not the sea of sand. And that's the thing that I said to the studio, that it was not a negotiation. I didn't want to shoot the desert on a back lot, or I didn't want to use green screens. I wanted to go in the real environment, to be as close as possible to nature, as Frank Herbert did when he wrote the book. Yeah.
Well, and I think one of the most spectacular locations that you've used in the film is Wadi Rum in Jordan, which some of you may know from Lawrence of Arabia. And a lot of films have shot in Wadi Rum since Lawrence. But for my money, this is the first time I've seen it used in as expressive a way. The sense of place, I think, is extraordinary. And how was it shooting in Wadi Rum? Because the thing about Wadi Rum is it's this vast valley. I mean, just on a scale, I just can't think of anything else in the world on that scale. So how were you getting to where you were shooting? Were you camping out there? Were you staying in a nearby town?
There's a town called Aqaba that is part of the Lawrence of Arabia story.
Aqaba by land.
Yeah. and Frank Herbert, when he wrote Dune, was inspired by T. Lawrence, Seven Pillars of Wisdom. And then it was like it was something natural to go back, because there's so many links between the Lawrence of Arabia and Dune. This idea of a man that decided to, because he falls in love with a new culture, and he feels home with this new culture, and wants to help the culture, and goes to war with the culture, and then realize that he himself is an instrument of colonialism. So it's very close to, so it was like, it made sense to go to Wadi Rum. Now, it was my third time that I was shooting in Jordan. I had been there first alone with a video camera, making a documentary about Petra when I was a film student. I came back 10 years later with a small film crew to shoot a feature film there. And I remember scouting all around Jordan, saying to myself, if ever I do a movie like Dune, that's where I come back, because the rock formation there are so poetic, so powerful, so unique. Then it became, as you rightly said, more exploited in movies, but it just feels so close to the description of the book. Mm. There's a place that the final scene where Paul and Jessica meets finally the Fremen. It's exactly the description. It's like that kind of horseshoe dead end in the rocks. It was like very mesmerizing for me to find those locations that felt so close to the spirit of the book.
Yeah, that's fabulous. What were your choices in terms of what to build? Because obviously there's a huge visual effects component. There's all kinds of enhancements to the environment. I think beautifully blended. What's your process of deciding what to build? And what were the biggest sets that you built?
The biggest one was probably, there's two. There's like the palace, the residency. We built like a massive corridor, so maybe 30 feet high, and it was like we took the old stage that I remember seeing the mouth of the producer when they saw the size of the sets. But we did also the thing is that I did one compromise because of budget. I wanted to shoot the landing on the Atreides are landing. I wanted to shoot that in the desert in Jordan. But it was too expensive. So we built a tarmac in Hungary, like the size of 2 football fields, and surrounded by sand screens around. And that was probably the biggest. It sounds silly to say, but that tarmac was huge. I mean, that was like that to create a scale, to have the distance with the extra, to have the proper scope.
How did you get the light? The sense of heat and sun there is amazing in that scene.
That's the thing. We were very lucky with climate in Jordan. We had those beautiful white skies, blow-up skies with a lot of wind, strong winds, and little sandstorm. I was like, the gods of cinema were with us, and I was so happy. And we were able to shoot, come back on schedule. We were heroes. Then we got punished because we landed in Hungary, and then it started to rain nonstop. So it was like something you cannot have on Arrakis. So yes, that was like the plan didn't work that well, frankly. The good thing is that we shot some interiors in Budapest. We went to Jordan for several weeks. When we came back, the crew knew exactly the amount of sand required on costume and on the dust. And so everybody came back with that experience of the desert. So it allowed us to recreate with the special effects, the dust and waiting for the right skies. Yeah.
Mm. So even the light, as the doors open and that bright line, is that just overexposing the
yes.
It's phenomenal.
And a lot of dust. I mean, a lot of dust and a lot of propellers. There's a lot of actors that didn't like dust. A lot of them.
Yeah. Well, talk to us about the actors. Talk to us about casting. I have a quick question about it because it's an extraordinary cast with so many familiar faces doing something new and different. Did that create scheduling problems with the actors there the whole time? I mean, obviously Timothée Chalamet, who's phenomenal in the movie. I mean, he would have had to be there the whole time. But was it the usual sort of scheduling puzzle that had to be put together?
I think that as memory is good. It was as usual, but it was not nothing special there, I would say. Because there was like blocks, you had the Jordan blocks where you had Zendaya and Javi Bardem, but I think the main problem was Oscar Isaac that was not able to come to Jordan with us, so I had to find the usual strategies to shoot him in Hungary. Yeah, I think the only problem we had with the Oscar schedule, but for the rest of the people, I think it went quite well. It was a long shoot, so it allowed to, yeah.
And how did you choose your cast? How did you go about taking what had been in your head for so long, Frank Herbert's words on the page? You must have had very fixed ideas about those characters. I mean, even more than we usually have from screenplay. You must have had really specific things.
Yeah. It's the biggest challenge for me in this movie was to try to be able to please the teenager I was. Because I was totalitarian. I was really pretentious, ambitious. When I was a teenager, I was dreaming big, and to try to, you understand what I mean? It's such an old dream. I remember talking with Hans Zimmer talking about, at the beginning, and he said, "Is it dangerous that we try to bring to life such an old dream? Will we face necessary disappointment? It's like disappoint ourselves, or that was a big challenge, is to try to not disappoint ourselves. Yeah, I'm a bit about casting it the same. I mean, Timothée imposes himself. You work with Timothée.
I did when he was a wee lad. Yeah, I think Interstellar was the first film where he got to go on his own without his parents and be a young man, and he was just absolutely lovely. And I assume he still is. But
yes,
he's extraordinary in the film.
He was my only choice, honestly. I think he has a level of maturity, and again, he looked very young on camera, and that contrast it was perfect for Paul Atreides. Also, his features are very aristocratic, and he has, as you know, the charisma of a rock star. I mean, Timothée is incredible. The camera loves him so much, because I needed that the audience to believe that if ever, and I'm praying again the gods, if ever we do part 2, we need to believe that this guy will fool a whole planet and make them believe it's a messianic figure and bring them into a war. So he needs that charisma.
Well, he's only 15 in the book, I seem to remember. And he bridges that age very, very nicely. It's kind of unthinkable without Tim, I think. And the rest of the cast, as it fleshes out, it's one of these movies where the scale of the film is greatly enhanced by the scale of the cast, by these new faces coming in, and whether it's Jason Momoa or Josh Brolin or whatever, and it's a great ensemble.
But thank you. The thing is, there's I had a list, and that list is pretty close to what you have on screen right now. There was some, of course, people that problem with the schedule. So there are some surprises for me. Some people that came on board that I was not thinking of. But frankly, no matter what people think about the film, I think that the description, when you read the book and you read the description of the character, we are pretty close to Frank Herbert's spirit. I think that it's a thing that I'm proud of, is the casting of this movie. Yeah, I love it.
So tell us about Baron Harkonnen. Tell us about Stellan Skarsgård. I mean, it's an extraordinary look. I mean, what did that involve technically? I mean, we see.
Yeah, I wanted to do as much as possible on camera, and when I asked Stellan, who was my first choice, I asked, I would love you to play the Baron, and he said, how do you want to do it? And I said, practically, I want to create a prosthetic suit, and he said, okay, I'm in, because he would have refused if I had done it virtually. He loved the idea to be able to portrait himself, to be, he didn't want to do something miniature. So we agreed on that. Then that's why every morning, the 8 hours of makeup, he never complained.
Oh my God.
No, but
8 hours.
Yeah, it was 8 hours to get in that suit. And the challenge was the shape. I didn't want the Baron to look like a fat baby or something, right, or a grotesque character. I wanted him to be frightening, to be muscular. So with my storyboard artist, we draw hundreds of shapes to come with that shape that will. And when it came for costume, my favorite costume of the Baron was when he was naked. I thought it was so powerful. So that's why the first scene, I rewrote the first scene to start with that steam bath, because I wanted to see him at least one time naked. I thought it was so beautiful.
And was there a conversation about Apocalypse Now at all? I mean, there's such a wonderful movement of the hand.
Yeah, it's Marlon Brando was definitely an inspiration for the Baron, yep. When we Greg Fraser and I were brainstorming about the film, we were it was like for us like a kind of love letter to the big screen experience, the theatrical experience. It was the book was calling for that, the landscape, and that it's a story of a boy that will slowly remove the burden of all his heritage and find comfort and make peace with a part of his identity as much as he's going deeper and deeper into a landscape. A bit like in some ways, in the character in Apocalypse Now, there was something like this idea of getting inside the landscape, and it becomes a more and more an introspective journey. Mm. I don't do that usually, but there's a lot of homage, little winks to movie I deeply love and our filmmaker I admire. So there's tons of references. It was just an act of pleasure, I would say.
Well, geography is enormously important to the film. Where did you shoot the Caladan scenes?
In Norway. Yeah, on the west coast of Norway, where we found those cliffs that felt again like the description of the book. There's some cliffs that were shot in the big ones that we see when Paul walks and the spaceships are rising from the waters in Norway. The cemetery scene was shot in Budapest on cliffs, and then we added the ocean in the background. Again, Oscar Isaac. Yeah. Okay.
Well, it's worth it. So. But yeah, I mean, it's fantastic the way you create the different worlds and allow us to really, really get lost in it. Obviously, a huge component of that is visual effects. But I think it's one of the most seamless marriages of live action photography and computer generated visual effects that I've seen. I think it's very, very compelling at every turn. How did you approach visual effects for the film?
The thing is, as you do yourself. I think you shoot as much as possible on real location, and you try to bring as I tried to avoid. There are some shots in the truth that are pure CGI, but I tried to avoid those as much as possible. The old movies, I mean, to shoot with real environments, with real plates as much as possible, using helicopters as proxies, the tricks that, and it's all about light at the end of the day. And I had a master class into how to lit a shot with doing Blade Runner with Roger Deakins, because Roger supervised with me all the VFX. So I spent a year listening to him on every shot. I mean, for me, I learned so much how to work on VFX with Roger. So that helped me tremendously to direct the team here.
Mm. And working with my old friend Hans Zimmer on the music, the music is incredible in the film. The range of sounds, and when you see the film for a second or a third time, the structure of how those sounds are used and how the different themes are assigned in such a complicated piece of work is very, very impressive. The freshness of the sounds are great. Hans came on board very early, I understand. And describe a little of that chaos.
Chaos. You know what you're talking about. No, but,
I know wherever I speak.
No, Hans, I think scoring that Hans had never, if I may, it's a story he tells a lot in public right now, that he had never even seen the previous incarnation of the because he wanted to stay a virgin. He said one day maybe I will have the chance to score an adaptation, and he wanted to, so he never heard anything that has been done before for other versions. And he became obsessed with the idea to create sounds that will come from another world. He created instruments, spent months, if not a year, creating sounds and really creating instruments that will use wind. And he was obsessed with the idea of, we both agreed that a score should enhance the idea of the feminine power of the book, the female qualities of the book. So he brought this idea of the female voice and tried to get out of this comfort zone. He was obsessed to trying to find new ways of using rhythms and using new instruments. And it became
and voices as well, a lot of voices.
Yeah. And he was really like a mad scientist. I mean, and I was waiting. And I said, it sounds fantastic. Yeah. but he came, but when suddenly he wrote that beautiful suite for Paul, and that was so moving. And then it was an explosion of music and I think he's still scoring the movie right now. I'm not joking. I still receive music from time to time because he wants to inspire me for the second one. The main thing with the music was the spirituality, the sacred quality of the music, that it felt like music to enhance the spirituality, the relationship with nature, that felt spiritual. So he worked. It was a very unique experience working with Hans. Honestly, it's for me. I mean, it was
well, and the attention that he always gives to the design, the sound design of the music, and how that's going to interact with the sound effects. I think the mix is really extraordinary. It was Doug Hempel and
Ron Bartlett. Yes, I had done Blade Runner with them, and I had the best experience. And Hans wanted to flirt because of that idea of using new sound. He was flirting. He came very close to the border of sound design. He asked the permission to the boys, to Theo Green and Mark Mangini. He said, "Guys, I'm gonna get very close." But they worked together. I mean, it was really teamwork. There was no, because we didn't want to have a car crash into the mix room, the dub room, So it's not something that was improvised. There was like a lot of back and forth between both teams, and to make sure that to create that. And I love when you have that kind of feeling where you don't know if it's score or design, that it becomes, like the line becomes blurred, becomes just like become very immersive and atmospheric. I deeply love that. It's by far my most musical movie. I don't use a lot of music in my. This one is like, I think it's like a never-ending score. I mean, because I was feeling that it needed that kind of operatic feeling to bring the music. The music was also used as counterpoints to sometimes give hints on the inner strategies of the character, of their thought process. A bit like, because in the book you have access to the thoughts of the characters, but here we were trying with music to get a bit closer to the spirit of the book, I would say.
And just talk a little bit about editing. Were you editing with the music, or were you using temp score? What was your editing process?
I hate to use temp score. I mean, frankly, first I try to cut the movie without any music. The truth is that to make a screening at one point for the studio, I had to use temp score because Hans was like still in his lab, but it was like temporary. I deeply hate temp scores. Yeah.
And was it a difficult film to edit? I mean, in terms of getting all of this complexity, it feels like there must have been significant challenges in terms of clarity, particularly.
Yeah. The thing is that I will say that the most challenging thing was the opening of the film, how to introduce this world to an audience that maybe to people that didn't read the book yet. Sorry, guys. My English is going the trap right now. I think I'm a bit jet lag, and I apologize for this. The idea was to please the hardcore fans, as I am, and as me, and to make sure that people who never read the book will feel welcome. And that was the big challenge, and that was a challenge in the screenwriting and in the challenge in the editing room as well. And things that we spent a lot of time to edit were the dream sequence, to give enough, not enough, to make sure that it was, how can I say, I wanted the vision to be like confusing, like dreams, but still clear enough to give hints to the audience so it's not frustrating. So to find that balance was not easy.
Well, I think you and your entire team did an absolutely incredible job of that. I think this film is going to introduce a whole new generation of fans to Dune who haven't even read it and perhaps will go and read the book now. I think it's an extraordinary piece of work, and I've had the luxury of seeing it a couple of times now, and each time I watch it, I discover new things, new details to the world, and I think the way in which it's made is absolutely for the big screen. It's a real pleasure. It's a real gift to film fans everywhere. So thank you very much for that, Denis, and thank you everyone for coming.
You're very generous. Thank you, my friend.